Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. May I get the permission from Mahasangha and dear Dhamma friends. This is the first time I'm doing a Dhamma discourse to this audience, and I'm really happy to have this opportunity on behalf of propagating Dhamma to a new Dhamma audience. And I was invited by Mr. Suminda and Mr. Tharaka to do a Dhamma discourse on monthly basis. So we are planning to do these kind of Dhamma discourses once in a month by me. So I would like to thank Mr. Suminda and Mr. Tharaka for the invitation and for their effort and for their coordination for this Dhamma discourse. So today we are going to discuss or having the Dhamma discourse about the virtue and about the concentration. What is the interrelation between virtue and the concentration? And what is concentration? What is the importance of the concentration? And these kind of things we are going to discuss today within this Dhamma discourse. So as the commencement of the Dhamma talk, we should have a understanding about the virtue. What is the morality? So virtue, what is the importance of the virtue for us? Our natural ways, we tend to do akusalas. What are those akusalas? We are doing by our bodily actions or by our verbal actions. Sometimes we do akusalas, unwholesome deeds like killing, stealing, and sometimes sexual misconduct, or using intoxicating substances. These kind of things sometimes people are doing by their body, and sometimes they do naturally by their words, like telling lies and having vain talks, harsh words, and these kind of things they are doing by their word. These all are akusalas. Whether it is done by body or whether it is done by word, they are akusalas. Naturally, people tend to do these bad deeds, unwholesome actions by the word or by the body. So when we are doing these kind of physical bad things and verbal bad things, we are within the sphere of akusalas. So when we are engaged with these unwholesome acts, our mind is also polluted by the defilements, because we are with the akusala, we are with the defilements. So our mind will be polluted because, and the other things, the bad thing is, after having these akusalas, we will be having bad results or the bad things as the return within this life or in the upcoming lives in our samsara. So the first thing is, when we are doing these bad deeds, our mind will be polluted, our bodily actions and the verbal actions are polluted, and the worst thing is we will be having bad results because of these unwholesome acts, unwholesome deeds. So the first thing we have to do is we have to refrain from these bad deeds, unwholesome acts. That's why we need a code of conduct or a moral conduct to refrain from these bad things, akusalas. So that is the first thing what we have to do, because if we are engaged continuously with these bad deeds, we cannot develop our we cannot develop our moral virtue, or we cannot go for the higher results in this practice. So the first things, we have to refrain from them. That is why we need a virtue, moral virtue, or the moral conduct. So that is the reason for that is the necessity of having a moral virtue. So the thing is, so these kind of by having a moral virtue, we can start this practice, because this is the basic element or the foundation for this practice. Otherwise, we will not be secured in the path. We are not like stable in this practice, within this practice. The sila, or the moral virtue, or the morality, it is the basic thing or the foundation for the practice. So we have to develop, as a beginner, we have to develop this moral virtue. We have to observe the precepts as per our status, because a layperson might be having the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts. Sometimes occasionally they observe 10 precepts, and the novices will be having 10 precepts dedicated for them, and the monks, the bhikkhus, will be having the greatest moral virtue or the moral conduct in this world. What can be observed as a like a worldly being. So because based on the situation, based on the character, we can decide what kind of a moral conduct we can observe. So having observed, we can then encourage ourselves to protect that. So as a beginner, you may encounter some difficulties. Sometimes you may feel that it is too difficult to protect these kind of moral conduct, these kind of precepts. Sometimes it is, you have to put much effort to protect these kind of moral conduct. But anyhow, you have to protect them. Sometimes the precepts will be broken easily in the early stage of the developing. So, but you have to observe again and again and try to strengthen your the sila or the morality, and you have to increase the time period you can spend with the moral conduct without breaking the precepts. So then you can develop the morality. Then without having this foundation, because I have mentioned this morality or the moral virtue is the basement of this practice. So we have a long journey to go until we achieve the Nibbana. So as a disciple, as a Buddhist, as a true disciple, we all have that ultimate objective to achieve the Nibbana, the ultimate liberation. So to achieve that ultimate liberation, we have to we have to generate the noble paths. That is the way to eradicate all the defilements within our mind. So for that, to generate these noble paths, we have to follow a long journey. We have to do so many things. We have to put much effort to develop this practice, to develop certain levels of this practice. So anyway, the beginning stage or the foundation, the first step, the first level is the morality. Without having the morality, you cannot expect the higher stages, higher levels, or the higher results of this practice. Sometimes you can go to some extent without having a purified morality. Without having the purification of the morality or the virtue, you can go up to some level, to some extent. But you are not secured in the path. You are not secured in the practice. Sometimes a small defilement or a single defilement can destroy all the results you have gained within the practice with a long period, with a much effort. So that is why you should have a very strong foundation with your sila, with your morality. Let's take an example like building, like a high-rise building. So when you construct this kind of a building, you should have a proper or a strong foundation in order to go for several stories, several levels, like multiple floors. Sometimes it may contain like 50, 100 stories. To have those kind of levels, you should have a very strong foundation. Without having a strong foundation, sometimes you can develop, sometimes you can construct a certain level of floors, stories. But when you go up to some level, sometimes you may feel the trembling, or sometimes it will be collapsed with a certain stage. So likewise, without having without having the purification of the moral virtue, you can develop the practice. It can be happen. Sometimes you may achieve some results, some higher results within the practice. But after going to certain extent, certain level, you may feel that means you are not stable, you are not secure. Then sometimes the defilements will destroy all the results what you have gained, or some of the results. Then it will be like a fail. You will lose all the results what you have gained. So that is why the Buddha is admonishing to have a strong or a purified moral virtue before you go for the higher levels. So that is the importance of the sila. So what is done by sila? Because sometimes we can feel, because we know in our within ourselves, we know there are several tendencies. We call the latent tendencies, anusaya. So sometimes we cannot even recognize that these kind of latent tendencies, the stage, a certain level of stage of the defilements, they are like hidden stage. So these latent tendencies, anusayas, within ourselves, sometimes by dealing with the objects, they come to the surface of the mind. That means the arising stage of the kilesa, of the defilements. We call the pariutthana. We call the pariutthana, because we are dealing with the mind, because they have arisen in the mind. They have come to the surface of the mind. So after having these kind of defilements in the surface, in the mind, sometimes you will go to the sometimes you may go to the transgressing stage. That means you are doing something, you are expressing that defilement by your body or by your word. You will do some action, the bad actions. You may kill someone, you may steal something, you may sometimes by your word you may tell lies, you may tell some harsh words. These kind of things will happen. We call the transgressing stage. We call the vitikkama. So when it comes to because earlier it was in the latent tendency level, the anusaya level, and it came to the surface of the mind, that the arising stage, the pariutthana, and after having the pariutthana level, then it will be expressed. It will come out by your bodily action or the verbal actions. Then you have done some powerful akusalas by your word or by your body. That is suppressed, or that is eliminated by having a virtue. Because sometimes you may feel that defilements are working in your mind, because they are coming to the arising stage, they are coming to the pariutthana. But if you are a virtuous person, if you have a moral virtue or moral conduct, if you have observed some precepts, you know that for you it is not suitable to have these kind of things by your body or by your word. Then you try to maintain the discipline within yourself because you are a virtuous person. Then you will be suppressing these kind of akusalas, unwholesome deeds by your body or by your action, by your word. That is the importance of the sila. So, and that is the behavior of the sila. But it is not like a great cause to eliminate the defilements to come to the arising stage, to the pariyuttana level. Because we cannot expect that level by just having the sila. By just having the sila, you cannot expect to eliminate these defilements at least for a certain period of time after like blocking these defilements to come to the arising stage, the coming to the surface of the mind. So sometimes even though you are a virtuous person, you may struggle with the defilements because they are time to time they are coming to the surface of the mind, because you will feel that pariyuttana level, because we are not expecting to eliminate that stage. We are suppressing your bodily akusalas or the verbal akusalas. So that is the main objective of having sila. Then by having this kind of a discipline, then you like try to develop that sila, and after having the like purification level of sila, you try to develop the next level. You should try to go for the next step. So for that you should have a proper understanding about this practice, because sometimes as the true disciple, you should have that objective, the ultimate objective to achieve that ultimate nibbana, the ultimate liberation. To achieve that ultimate liberation, you should generate these 4 maggas, because these certain levels you have to generate within yourself. For that you have to do vipassana. Doing the vipassana is not a very easy thing. It will take time. You have to put much effort, and sometimes you need some concentration to do the vipassana. And for do this samatha and vipassana and to develop the concentration, you need the purification level of the morality. That is the thing. That is the behavior of this practice. So you have to understand the progressive levels of this practice, because as a true disciples you have to try to achieve these kind of levels, these kind of results by not just focusing on the sila. You need the morality, yes, it's true, because without having a proper purification of the morality, you cannot go for the higher levels. But anyhow, as a true disciples, as a Buddhist, you have to go for the upcoming levels, the higher levels in this practice. Otherwise, you will not achieve the results of this practice as Buddha admonished. So you have to understand that, because you should not limit it to morality, like your entire life just focusing on the morality, just protecting the sila is not enough as a true disciple. You have to try. You have to try to achieve the higher levels. So in order to have that understanding, you should have the correct understanding about this progressive path, because this path or this practice is progressive as Buddha's admonishment. This path or the practice is progressive. The improvements are also progressive, and the results are also progressive. You have to learn about them. What are the progressive levels of this practice? In order to achieve the higher levels, you have to follow the path correctly with the correct advices. You should have the understanding about the sphere of morality. To which level I should improve my morality, to which level, to which extent should I focus on this morality, and when I have the eligibility to go forward, to go for the next level. So that is that should be understood by having the proper understanding about this progressive path, because as per the Buddha's admonishments, Buddha himself classified this path into several segments, or the several categories, several levels. The foremost categorization or the classification is the Sapta Visuddhi. We call the sevenfold purification path. There are 7 levels. This is done by the Buddha. This classification is done by the Buddha. What is the first path is we call the Sila Visuddhi. That is the purification of the moral virtue. That is the first level. And we have the second level, the purification of the mind. We call the Chitta Visuddhi. And the third level is the Ditti Visuddhi. We call the purification of the views. And the fourth level is Kanka Vitarana Visuddhi, the purification of overcoming the doubts. And the fifth one is Magga Magga Jnana Dassana Visuddhi, the purification by knowledge and vision about what is the path and what is not the path. And the sixth level is Patipada Jnana Dassana Visuddhi, that is the purification by knowledge and the vision about the path. And the last, seventh level segment is the Jnana Dassana Visuddhi, that is the purification of the vision, knowledge and the vision. These are the 7 paths divided by the Buddha himself. So within these 7 paths, these are progressive levels. You have to follow the one path and you have to go for the second. You have to go for the third. Likewise, you have to follow this path. You cannot jump into here and there, because you have to follow as per the flow. You have to follow this one. This is we call the progressive practice. And very easy to understand if you go, if you try to understand, if you try to learn about them, it is very easy to understand what are those segments and what are, because within those segments there are sub classification sub segments. We can talk about them later, but the foremost step is the Sila Visuddhi, that is the purification of the morality. That purification of the morality is the result of having the Sila. So that is the first level and the foremost level. Without having this Sila Visuddhi, the purification of the moral virtue, you cannot go for the higher levels, because as I said earlier, you can have some levels, some results of the higher levels, but even though you have achieved some results, it would not be secured, it would not be stable, because the foremost level is your foundation is not stable, your foundation is not strong. So that is why the Buddha is admonishing to have that first stage strong. You should have a very strong foundation with the Sila. This is the Sila Visuddhi. But it is out of the 7 segments, this is only the first one. If someone is just focusing on the Sila Visuddhi or the purification of the moral virtue, it is not enough. You have higher segments to achieve. You have to come to those stages one by one and to achieve the ultimate liberation. If someone is just focusing on the Sila Visuddhi by just protecting the precepts, by just protecting the moral conduct, it is not enough, because you are losing. You will not experience the high results. You will not achieve the ultimate, the noble results within this asana. So the first level is Sila Visuddhi, the purification of the moral virtue. You have to put much effort to achieve that, to pass that stage, to achieve the results of that stage. As a beginner in the early stage, you may feel it is too difficult to protect this kind of a sila. You are like struggling with the precepts because sometimes easily they might be broken by yourselves. Then you have to observe again and again, because if you are like observing them again and again because of the breaking of the precept, it is not a good level of the sila. You have to improve you have to put much effort to develop, to increase that time gap in between two observations. So you have to put much effort to develop your purification of the sila. Initial stage you might feel that it is too difficult, but after a certain period of time you may feel that it is somewhat easier for you. So sometimes you are happy about your moral conduct or the moral virtue. You are happy because you are not doing akusala, you are engaged, or you are trying to develop the kusalas within yourself. Then you may have some happy feeling, pleasure within yourself. And sometimes you may feel that it is not that much difficult now because it is too easy for me to protect these kind of precepts. Sometimes a person can develop, increase the number of precepts they observe, or they can come to a higher level of the sila. So anyway, by developing the sila, sometimes you may come to a certain level of purification of this moral virtue. So that is how you can identify that you have come to a certain level of purification with regards to this moral virtue. Because the first thing is, like I said earlier, you may feel that it is somewhat easier for you to protect these kind of precepts, like based on your moral conduct you have observed. Sometimes for a lay person you may have the 5 precepts. Sometimes you may have 8 precepts. Sometimes occasionally you will you will try to protect the 10 precepts. For a novice it should be 10 precepts. For a bhikkhu it's a upasampada sila, that is adi sila, the highest sila within this world. So sometimes a monk may try to protect the fourfold purification of morality. That is, we call the Chatuparisuddha Sila. We call the Patimokka Sangvara Sila. That is the refrain with regards to the moral conduct. Patimokka Sangvara Sila. And the second level of the Indriya Sangvara Sila, that is refrain with regards to the sense faculties, 5 senses. And the third one is the Ajiva Parisuddhi Sila, that is the purification of the livelihood. And the fourth category is the Pacche Sannisita Sila, that is the contemplation about the 4 requisites by your wisdom. So for a layperson, this fourfold purification of morality would be somewhat difficult, but the monks sometimes they can follow this one. They are trying to protect these Chatuparisuddha Sila. And sometimes the monks are having the osteo practices, we call the Dutanga. Sometimes they are protecting several Dutangas at once, osteo practices. These are the levels based on the character, based on the person. The level of the virtue can differ. But anyhow, based on your choice, based on your moral conduct, what you have observed, you can develop that. Then after putting much effort, after a certain period of time, you may feel that it is somewhat easier for you to protect these sila or the moral virtue. Then that is a sign that you have come to a certain level of purification with regards to the moral virtue. That is the first sign or first thing you can come to a conclusion that you have come to a purification level. We call the Sila Visuddhi. But you can develop it furthermore. But anyhow, you are eligible to go for the next level. The other thing is, Buddha admonished or Buddha praised about the results. What are the rewards you can, what are the benefits you can achieve by having a pure Sila. After having a purification level of the Sila or the moral virtue, you may feel some benefit, you will experience some rewards, benefits within yourself. The first thing is, if someone is a virtuous person, he is effortfully try to protect the moral virtue, the moral conduct, then he will be free from remorse. That is the first result, the avippatisara. This is, you can experience within yourself, you are not regretting about your past, because you have not done akusalas, you have improved the kusalas, so there will not be a thing to regret about. So you will be free from remorses. Avippatisara, that is the first benefit. You can experience that within yourself if you have a certain level of purification with regards to the moral virtue. Then if you have the free from remorses, then you will feel the early stage of the happiness, we call the joy, the pamojja. Then after having the pamojja, you will experience, you will feel the powerful or the strong stage of the happiness, we call the rapture, piti. But after experiencing the piti, you feel that your body is calm. Your body, you feel the passaddhi, we call the serenity. You feel that the calm, you feel the calmness of your body and the mind. And when you experience the passaddhi, when you have the passaddhi in your body and the mind, then you will feel the sukha, we call the pleasure, within your body. Your mind is also very calm, and your body will be calm, and you will feel the pleasure. When you have the sukha, when you have the pleasure, then your mind tends to have the samadhi, concentration, because your mind tends to be with one object for a certain period of time. That is not, we have not achieved the excess concentration or the absorption levels, but because of these results, avippatisara, free from remorses, and the pamojja, the joy, and the piti, the rapture, and the passaddhi, the serenity, and the sukha, the pleasure, your mind is very calm, your body is very calm, your body is comfortable, you feel that comfortable level within your body and the mind. Then your mind tends to have one object for a certain period of time. Your mind is not running, your mind is not jumping to the certain objects like very frequently. So these results you can experience within yourself if you are developing the risila, if you have achieved the certain level of purification with regards to the moral virtue. That is also a sign that you can come to a conclusion that you have achieved at least some level of the purification of your sila. Then you can decide, okay, I'm eligible, now I have achieved at least certain level of purification, so I'm eligible to go forward and go for the next level. What is the next level? The second level is the chitta visuddhi. Now we have now we have achieved some level of sila visuddhi. It is not the end. You have to develop furthermore the moral virtue, but at least you are eligible. You have come to that certain level, you have achieved the eligibility to go for the next level, that chitta visuddhi. That is the purification of the mind. This chitta visuddhi we are just focusing on the concentration. The first stage is dedicated for the moral virtue, and the second stage is dedicated for the concentration. And we should understand why there is a stage called the chitta visuddhi, the purification of the mind. Why we need to develop the mind, why we need to develop the concentration, and what is the concentration. So this is basically, if we have a very simple definition, the concentration is, let's consider about our natural way, our natural condition of our mind. Our natural way is we are jumping from one object to another object in a very fast manner. We cannot be with one object for a certain period of time, for a longer period, because usually we are jumping, we are changing the object time to time. It means at least we are not spending our time at least few seconds with one object. We are moving to another object, and we are not spending that new object for a long period, and we are moving to a new one. That is happening all the time. That is the natural way of our mind. We are taking, because we have several doors, we have physical doors, we are taking the visible objects through our eye door. We are taking the audible objects from our ear door. Likewise, sometimes we have 5 sense faculties, physical sense faculties, and we have the mind door also. We are taking the mental objects through our mind door, through our mind. So within these, by getting those kind of objects, we are moving, we are jumping from one object to another, because continuously, without having a gap, we are jumping, we are running within these objects. That is the natural way. But what is the concentration is the skill or the ability to be with one object for a certain period. It can be like a few minutes, it can be half an hour, 1 hour, or a few hours, sometimes a whole day or a few days. You can be with one object for a longer period. That ability or the skill, what is developed within yourself to be with one object for a longer period, we call the concentration, the samadhi. It has different classifications. You may have the excess concentration, we call the upachara samadhi, and we call the jhana levels, the absorption levels. Anyway, you can achieve those things by developing the samadhi, developing the concentration. When we talk about the Abhidhamma perspective, we have a mental factor in our mind called ekaggata, one-pointedness. The task of the ekaggata is to have one object from one perspective. That is the kiccha, or that is the task of that ekaggata. By developing the tranquility, by developing the concentration, what we are doing, we develop the level of that ekaggata. We develop the level of the ekaggata, and ekaggata can have the same object for a longer period. That skill will we elaborate or we define, that is the skill or the ability to be with one object for a longer period as the concentration or the samadhi. That is the basic definition or the simple definition about the concentration. And it would be enough to have a rough idea about the samadhi or the concentration. And this is the definition, and we need to focus, we need to understand why we need concentration and what is the interrelation between the sila, the morality, and the concentration. I have said that we have that latent tendencies in our mind, defilements. So sometimes we cannot recognize. Because of the objects we have through our faculties, these defilements, the latent tendencies, defilements, will come to the surface of the mind. That means they will come to the arising stage. But by having a virtuous life, by having a moral virtue or the moral conduct, we are suppressing, we are eliminating those transgressing stage or the vitikkamana stage by having those bad deeds by your body or action. But by just having the sila, we cannot stop, we cannot eliminate, we cannot suppress these defilements by coming to the surface of the mind, by coming to the rising stage. Because pariyuttana happens all the time, because defilements are working. Because of the objects, based on the objects we meet, we encounter, these defilements come to the arising stage, we call the pariyuttana. Just sila cannot help to eliminate those kind of defilements coming to the arising stage. So that is a drawback of the sila, because we cannot stop that one, because it is you are struggling with your mind, because you are not doing any bad deeds by your word, by your body, by your actions, but still you are struggling with your defilements, because they are coming to the surface of the mind. You are dealing with your mind with those defilements, but you are not doing akusalas by your actions. So still you are struggling, so you need a solution for this one. That is why the concentration is helpful, because concentration will helpful to suppress these defilements by eliminating that arising stage, because even though they are not coming to the surface level of the mind, because they are suppressed by these kind of concentration. It can be upachara samadhi, excess concentration, or the absorption level, jhanas. You are suppressing those kind of defilements by coming to the arising stage. That is the benefit, that is the interrelation between the sila, morality, and the concentration, because the sila, morality, has some limitation. It cannot help to suppress the defilements by coming to the arising stage. It can only do the suppressing of the vitikkamana, the transgressing stage. But the limitations, the drawbacks of the sila will be achieved by the overcome by the concentration, because you are suppressing those defilements. Then now the defilements are even not come for the arising stage. They are in that latent tendency level, at the anusaya level. That is the benefit, or that is the importance of having the concentration and the interrelationship between the morality and the concentration. Okay, now we should understand about this furthermore with the practice. As a disciple, I have mentioned that we have that ultimate objective to achieve Nibbana. It can be in a different ways. A person may try to achieve that Nibbana by becoming a Samma Sambuddha. And someone will like to have that Nibbana, to achieve that Nibbana by becoming a Pacceka Buddha. And sometimes another person will be hoping, he is expecting to become just like Agga Savaka or Maha Savaka, these kind of Arahants, and to achieve the Nibbana. Sometimes just a normal Arahant. Anyway, your final objective, ultimate objective, to achieve the Nibbana. To achieve the Nibbana, you have to achieve or to generate the 4 maggas, the 4 noble paths. We call the Sotapatti Magga, the path of the stream entry, and the Sakadagami Magga, the path of the once returner, and the Anagami Magga, path of the non-returner, and the Arahatta Magga, path of the Arahant. These 4 maggas, 4 noble or transcendental paths, should be generated within yourself to eradicate the defilements level by level, completely, permanently from your mind. Then you will become a Arahant. You can become just a normal Arahant, and or the Mahasavaka, or the Agga Savaka, or the Pacceka Buddha, or Samma Sambuddha. Anyway, your ultimate goal is to achieve the Nibbana. So you have to achieve, you have to generate these 4 noble paths within yourself. That is a function about the wisdom, because to achieve this Nibbana, what is the essential thing? You have just having the sila, you cannot generate these 4 maggas, 4 noble paths. Just having the concentration, you cannot achieve achieve these 4 noble paths. By just having the sila and concentration, sila and samadhi, the morality and the concentration, even though you cannot achieve. Just having those 2, you cannot achieve, you cannot generate these 4 maggas, 4 noble paths. And what is the most essential? The required thing is the wisdom. Without developing, without improving your wisdom, you can never achieve these 4 maggas or the 4 noble paths. Then you can never achieve the ultimate liberation. You will not be an Arahant without developing the wisdom. That is the function of the wisdom. The function of the morality is different. Function of the concentration is different. By just having the functions of the morality, by just having the function of the concentration, you can never achieve the these higher results, the higher noble results. That is done by the function of the wisdom. So without developing this wisdom, you can never achieve those higher noble results. So to develop the wisdom, what we have to do? Just improving sila, we cannot develop the wisdom. Just improving the concentration, we cannot develop the wisdom. So to improve your level of the wisdom, to become an eligible person to generate these 4 noble paths, what is the most important thing to improve the wisdom? That is the vipassana. By doing the insight meditation, by doing the vipassana bhavana, by doing the insight meditation, you can develop the wisdom, and you will be an eligible person to generate these 4 noble paths. So what is vipassana, and why we need to develop the wisdom, and how it is achieved? What is vipassana? Because usually we deal with the external world, because we are dealing the external world with our 5 sense faculties and our mind door. We are taking the objects and we are dealing with them. So that is the natural way. We are thinking about the world as we think. But it is not the correct way, because it is, our mind is affected by the defilements, the hindrances, the fetters and the cankers. These sometimes we call the compactnesses, we call the gana. We have the samuha gana, that is the compactness about the grouping, and the santati gana, compactness about the continuity, and sometimes the arammana gana, the compactness about getting the objects, and we call the kiccha gana, we call the compactness about the functionality. Having these, because our mind is covered with these things, the 4 compactnesses and the defilements, hindrances, fetters, cankers, we are getting the effect of these things to our mind. Having the effect of all these bad things, we are dealing with the world in a wrong manner. It is not the correct way. So we have to understand what is out there. We have to recognize the world as it is. Is there a self? What is I? What is called I? Is there a self within I? So is there a world out there? And what has happened to me in the previous life, and what is happening now, and what is going to happen to me in the next life, and how it is going to happen, what are the causes, and what is the world, what is the self. So these kind of things we have to understand. We have to do the analysis about these things. We have to understand the world as it is in the correct way. We have to understand about ourselves. We have to understand about the world in the correct way. So that is what we are doing by doing vipassana, by developing the insight meditation. We try to understand the world as it is. We try to understand ourselves as it is. We try to understand what are the realities, what are the namas, what are the mentalities, what are the that means within the nama they are we call the consciousness and the mental factors, chitta and chetasika, and what are the rupas, the materialities or the corporeality. We have to understand what are those realities, what is actually out there, what is self, what is I, what is the world. So we are going to understand about these things in the real way, That is done by vipassana. So without understanding these things, without having a proper understanding about these things, you cannot develop your wisdom. Developing the wisdom is developing your understanding about these realities, about this world, about yourself. That is done by wisdom. That is done by vipassana, and you can develop your wisdom. Then only you can achieve, you are eligible to generate the 4 maggas, 4 noble paths. Then you will achieve the ultimate nibbana. Okay, now to do the vipassana, you have to do a very huge task. That means you have to do it. It is not an easy task. So you have to put more effort. But to do the vipassana, we have, because we are connected with the world, external world, through our sense faculties, 5 material sense faculties and our mind. We are taking different kind of objects. We are dealing with the objects. We are understanding, we are recognizing, we are realizing the world through these mind and through these 5 physical sense doors. So we are taking different kind of objects. So we are understanding, we are taking ideas about the world, about ourselves through these faculties, through these objects. So, but we are dealing with these objects, we are through these sense faculties in a wrong way. That's why we have a self attitude, self view, some other bad views, and we are we have the Nietzsche film. They are permanent. We don't have that impermanence within ourselves. We are thinking that they are all pleasurable, and there is a self within ourselves. There is a self within the others. So there is a being that who is going from life to life. Those kind of wrong views we have. That is why we are dealing with the objects in a wrong manner. So we are realizing, we are understanding the world, we are understanding ourselves in a wrong manner. So that is why we are going to break this. To break this, we have to understand the objects in a proper way. That is why we are doing the contemplation. That is why we are doing the insight meditation. To do the insight meditation, we have to analyze these objects in a correct way. Let's take an example. If you are given a statue, let's take a very ancient statue, and you are asked to do a research on this. You are asked to write a technical paper or a thesis with regards to this ancient statue. So what you have to do? You have to understand, you have to get a proper understanding, realization about this statue. In order to achieve that, you have to look at this statue in different angles, from the top, from the bottom, from the left view, from the right view, from the front view, back view. You have to observe this statue in different angles. Otherwise, you cannot come to a conclusion, right conclusion with that statue. So you have to observe it thoroughly to write down a thesis or something. And the one thing is you have to observe in different angles. The second thing is you have to spend more time with that statue. That is the second thing. Without spending much time, a longer period with that statue, you cannot come to a strong conclusion. You cannot come to a right conclusion with that statue. By spending much time with a longer period with that statue, and by observing that statue with different angles, you can come to a very good and a very higher level of conclusion, and you can write down the thesis or something. As per the example, we have to think about the objects. We have to observe, we have to analyze the objects we are taking from our sense faculties in a right way. You have to contemplate about those things, because before you start the insight meditation, you should have some knowledge. What are the namas? What are the rupas? That means what are the mentalities? What are the materialities? And what is nibbana? And what is the self-view? What is the sphere of insight meditation? So these kind of things, what are the functionalities of them? What are the characteristics of those realities? How many realities, and what are the realities within ourselves? What is the realities out there in the world? So these kind of knowledge you have to gain before you start the insight meditation. By having that kind of a knowledge, you can start the insight meditation. Then you are contemplating about the objects you are taking from through your sense faculties. That is the function of the way of doing the vipassana, insight meditation. Okay, now you know how to do the meditation, but to do the meditation, you have to deal with the objects. Through the objects, you are trying to contemplate, because based on your knowledge, you have gained through the books or through the Dhamma talks from the teachers. You are trying to contemplate, you are trying to use this knowledge practically with the objects. So to do that, to observe that object in a proper way, as per the examples for the statue, you have to you have to spend much time with that statue to get the correct view. And you have to observe that statue in different angles. Likewise, to get the right understanding, correct understanding about the object, you have to spend with the objects for a longer period. And the second thing is, you have to observe that object, you have to analyze that object in different angles. There are several ways to do the vipassana. There are several ways. You can learn them later how to do the vipassana. There are several ways, several methods. But out of them you can use several methods or one method to do the vipassana. But anyway, you have to observe that, you have to look at that, you have to analyze that object in different angles. Otherwise you cannot have the correct proper understanding about that object. And you have to spend more time within that same object. But what is our natural way? We are not spending much time with each and every object. We are jumping one object to another in a very fast manner. We cannot be. Even though we try to spend, even though we are trying to be with one object for a longer period, at least few seconds, few minutes, we cannot do that. We cannot be with that object for a longer period. That is our natural way. Even though we try, we go somewhere very calm and quiet place and we try to focus on one object, we cannot do. That is a skill or ability to improve yourself. So now we know, to have that complete idea or the very to get the observation, thoroughly do the observation, you have to spend more time with the object and you have to observe that object in different angles. But what is our natural way? We are not spending much time with every object because we are just moving from one object to another, then another. We are not spending much time with each object. So that is a drawback, and that is the disadvantage within ourselves, because we cannot perform that insight meditation, we cannot perform that vipassana in a correct way. So we are jumping from one to another. So we will not have the chance to observe that object in different angles because we are not spending much time. So our vipassana will not be successful. And after a certain period of time, you will be fed up with the insight meditation. Sometimes you will give up the insight meditation because it is too difficult, because you cannot spend much time with the object, because your natural way is you are moving one object to another in a very fast manner. Frequently you are changing. So sometimes even though without developing that skill to be with the object for a longer period, without developing, improving that ability, the vipassana, doing the insight meditation would be very tough, and you have to put much effort. It is very tiring and irritating. Sometimes you will give up that. You will fed up with the insight meditation. So if you give up the meditation, if you give up the practice, you will not come to the higher stages. Even you cannot achieve one single vipassana knowledge, or we call the insight knowledges, in the practice. So we don't have to talk about the other higher noble paths. You cannot achieve those noble paths, or you cannot achieve the ultimate liberation. So with our natural way, the vipassana will be a very tough one, very difficult one. You have to face more inconveniences or the uncomfortable situation with the insight meditation. What is the solution? The drawback or the disadvantage is we cannot be with the object for a longer period. That is the drawback or the disadvantage we have, because our natural ways we are jumping one object to another. then what would be the solution? We have to improve the time period we are spending, we are staying with object with the time. If we can improve the time period, the time gap we are spending with one object, then we will be able to observe that object in different angle. With our knowledge what we have gained based on the Vipassana sphere, based on the books or the teachers, then we can apply practically on the objects we are taking from our faculties, because now we have developed the skill or the ability to be with the object for a longer period. Sometimes it may be several minutes, several hours. Then you are eligible to perform the Vipassana or the insight meditation process on these objects. Now you are eligible, and the thing is, you are very it is very convenient for you to perform that Vipassana process. Let's take an example, because when you are asked to cut a tree, like without having a proper blade, because a proper blade in your axe or a knife. Let's take that kind of an example. That is a big tree, and you are asked to cut that tree by that axe that is not having a proper blade. So you are trying to do that task. What is your task? Is to cut the tree. What is your instrument? That axe or a knife having the improper blade. It is not suitable. It is not eligible for that task. Now anyway you are asked, so you are trying to do to perform the task. What would happen? The first drawback is the task would be very tiring, because you have to put much effort, because your blade is not enough, not suitable for that task. You have to put more effort, much effort, and it is very tiring. You will feel tired, and anyhow you have to spend like hours, days to perform, to complete that task. What is the main objective is to have some woods from the tree. The task is to cut the tree. What is the instrument? That axe or a knife. But the first drawback is you have to put more effort. It is too difficult. You will be tired, and it is irritating. The second drawback is it will take more time. The first thing is you have to put more effort, and the second thing is you have to spend more time with that task. That is also a drawback, because you don't have the proper instrument to perform that task. Those two drawbacks are there. That means you have to put, it is tiring, and the second thing is you have to spend more time. Likewise, the Vipassana is a task. What is our objective? To achieve the four maggas, four noble paths, or the ultimate liberation, Nibbana. That is the final objective. What is the objective in the example? To have the woods, to make a furniture. And what is the task in the example? Cutting the tree. What is the task within our practice is doing the Vipassana. And what is the object in the example is the axe or the knife. What is the object in our practice, in our task of doing Vipassana? Our mind. Our mind is the instrument. By using the mind instrument, you are performing the task of Vipassana to achieve the final objective of Nibbana. So what would happen if our instrument is not suitable for the task? Because as per the example, we didn't have a proper instrument to perform the task. That is why we have to put more effort, why it is tiring, and why we had to spend more time. Likewise, in this Vipassana task, in this task of insight meditation, if you don't have a suitable or a proper instrument within yourself, what is the instrument? The mind. If the mind is not proper in a suitable condition or a eligible condition to perform that Vipassana task, the two drawbacks will be there. What are the two drawbacks? You have to put more effort, it's tiring, it is not comfortable and it is irritating. Sometimes you will fed up and you will give up the task. And the second thing is you have to spend more time to do the insight meditation. By having a very long period, sometimes you may have not achieved even a single result, single vipassana knowledge within this practice. Then it is tiring, you will not be happy, and sometimes you will fed up and you will give up the entire practice, entire insight meditation process. Then you will not achieve the ultimate objective. So these are the drawbacks of not having a proper instrument, mind instrument within yourself. So having the proper instrument, you will have two advantages. What are the two advantages? You don't have to put much effort. The task would be very easier because conveniently you can perform the task. That is the first advantage. If you have the mind instrument is in the proper condition, you don't have to spend much time. You don't have to wait for a longer period, because within a short period you can perform the insight meditation and can experience some results, some insight knowledges, and sometimes the noble paths even you can achieve with a short period. Because what is the reason? You are performing the task with a proper or a suitable instrument. What is the instrument? The mind instrument. So likewise, you have to understand, to achieve the ultimate object, you have to perform the task without much effort, without spending much time. In order to achieve those two advantages, you have to have like the proper mind instrument, or a instrument which is in the suitable condition. Our instrument is mind. How we can prepare our mind, how we can make our mind a proper instrument? By doing the samatha, by developing the concentration. Why? As I said earlier, the vipassana is like understanding, or we are observing, analyzing the objects with our knowledge what we have gained about the vipassana sphere. So we have to apply those within our insight meditation. So to do that task, to perform that task, we have to spend more time. We have to spend much time with the object. So otherwise, we will not be having the proper understanding about the object. Then still we are in a bad or the wrong view about this object, with our self view or something. And to perform that vipassana in a correct way, in an effective and efficient way, we have to develop that ability to be with the object for a longer period. That is how we make our mind instrument to become a proper one. That is how we make our mind instrument to a suitable condition to perform that vipassana task. So that to achieve that objective, we have to develop the concentration, because our main to perform the task in a very effective and efficient way, you have to spend much time with the object. To develop that skill or the ability, you have to develop the concentration. You have to develop the concentration by developing the tranquility, by developing the samatha. That is why the importance of the chitta visuddhi. That is why after the sila visuddhi, the first stage of the sappha visuddhi, the purification of, after completing the sila visuddhi, after completing the purification of the moral virtue, then you have to perform, you have to achieve the results of the chitta visuddhi, the purification of the mind. That is why Buddha admonished to perform this second level, the second segment, before you go to the vipassana. That is the importance of the developing of mind, developing the skill or the ability of to be with the object for a longer period. That is the importance of the concentration. Now you can understand why in between the sila, the morality, and in between Sila and the Vipassana, why this Chitta Visuddhi or the purification of mind is included by the Buddha himself, and why we have to perform that, why we have to develop the concentration. Chitta Visuddhi, the purification of the mind or the concentration, is the result. Developing is a different thing, and the development or the purification level is a different thing. After having a purification, certain level of purification of the Sila, moral virtue, I said you can come to the next stage, that is to develop the mind, to develop the concentration. In order to that, you can take whatever the meditation object, and based on the advice of the proper teacher, you can perform, you can develop the concentration. What is the concentration? The ability or the skill to be with one object for a longer period. Then you are practicing any kind of a meditative object, and you develop the concentration. You develop the function of the ekaggata, one-pointedness. Then after having a certain period of timing, with much effort, you are focusing on one object for a longer period, then your ability, the skill, will be developed. After some periods, it may be weeks, months, years, you can achieve the access concentration. We call the Upachara Samadhi. Upachara Samadhi. And after that, you can strengthen the Jnananga. We call the Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekaggata. Vitakka is the initial application, and the Vichara is the sustained application, and the Vitakka, Vichara, Piti is the rapture, Sukha is the pleasure, and the Ekaggata is the one-pointedness. So we have developed the Ekaggata, one-pointedness, to achieve the concentration, to achieve the ability or the skill to be with the object for a longer period. Because you have to develop the concentration to perform, to make the mind to become a proper instrument to perform the Vipassana process or the Vipassana task, in order to achieve the ultimate object of having the Four Noble Paths. That is the interrelationship between these 7 segments in the sevenfold purification path, or this Sila, Samadhi and Panya. This is the morality, concentration and the wisdom. You have to understand briefly about this practice very well. Otherwise, you cannot understand the progressive levels, progressive way, and what to do, to which extent I have to spend for this part or the segment. You should have a proper understanding. So when we talk about the concentration, usually in our natural ways, we don't have that ability. We don't have that skill to be with one object for a longer period. That's why the Vipassana also very difficult for us, because we are trying to focus on one object. Within few seconds, the object will be changed without our intention, without our effort. It is happen naturally. So we cannot be with that object. That is why we need to improve the concentration. So naturally, we don't have concentration. We have to improve it. It will take much time. You have to put much effort. Otherwise, you cannot develop that concentration. Even not having the concentration, you can perform the Vipassana. We cannot say without having any Upachara Samadhi, without having any Jhana Samadhi, you cannot perform. It is impossible to having the Vipassana. You can perform, but you have to understand, you have to keep in your mind that there are 2 drawbacks, disadvantages. What are them? You have to put more effort. Without the concentration, your mind is not eligible, suitable for that task. You have to put more effort. It will be very tiring. It would be very uncomfortable, inconvenient for you. Sometimes you will be fed up. You will give up the entire process. And the second disadvantage is you have to spend more time. You have to put more effort for a longer period in order to achieve a small result from this Vipassana process, to achieve a single knowledge of Vipassana, insight knowledge. Sometimes after spending a longer period, sometimes you may not achieve single achievement, single Vipassana knowledge, insight knowledge, after having these kind of process. Then you will be end up with the giving up the entire process. So you can perform vipassana, but you have to think about these drawbacks. Sometimes it will be very tiring. But what would happen to a person after developing that skill, after developing the concentration, if he is going to do the vipassana, it would be very easy for him, because now he has developed the concentration. His mind, or the mind instrument, is eligible, suitable to perform the vipassana task without putting much effort and without spending much time. Those advantages will be there. So you have to think about why we have to develop concentration to a certain extent. There are different levels you can do the concentration and come to the vipassana knowledge. The first thing is, you can do without having any concentration, development of the concentration, you can perform vipassana. So that is the first way. But you have to think about, you have to understand the two disadvantages are there. You have to put much effort and you have to spend more time. The second way is, you can perform, you can develop the concentration to a certain level, to a certain extent, but you have not achieved access concentration, no absorption level, no upachara samadhi, no jhana levels. But you can feel that you can spend some time with the objects, but you have not achieved upachara or jhana. But you can perform, you can move to the vipassana process, and by simultaneously, mutually you can do vipassana and samatha, the insight meditation, and developing the tranquility simultaneously. Then sometimes you can develop the vipassana as well as the tranquility, and you can develop the both stages, both levels. That can also possible, because as the present situation, as when we compare with the present situation of the people, present situation of the level of the wisdom, this would be the most suitable way, because having a certain level of concentration, you can move to the vipassana, insight meditation, and you can perform both of them simultaneously. You can develop the both concentration and the vipassana knowledges at the same time. We call the yuganadda bhavana, because we are doing the both at the same time. The third level is, you can develop the concentration to a higher level. You can achieve upachara samadhi, that means the action concentration, or you can develop jhana level. We call the absorption level, the patama jhana, the first level of the absorption, the second level of absorption. Likewise, you can develop all the jhanas, all the rupavachara jhanas, all the arupavachara jhanas, you can develop those things. At least you can have one jhana, then your purification of the mind would be very high. So you can easily move to the vipassana knowledge. But developing the concentration up to a jhana level would be a very tough one. It will take a longer period. The third level is, you can achieve one level of jhana, one concentration level of absorption, and you can move to the vipassana meditation. That is the third level. You can choose whatever the method, but most suitable level is, you, without having jhana or without having excess concentration, you can have some certain level of concentration and you can move to the vipassana. You can perform the vipassana task, vipassana process, and at the same time you can develop the concentration or the tranquility within yourself. That would be the most suitable method for the today's practitioners. Likewise, you have to select what is most suitable for you. Anyway, our natural way, I said earlier, our natural way is, we don't have concentration. Usually we are jumping one object to another very frequently, in a very speed manner. We cannot be with one object for a longer period. That is why we cannot perform the vipassana effectively and efficiently. That is why we need concentration. This natural way is happening within ourselves, because we cannot be with one object, because we are affected by the hindrances, mainly the hindrances. Some other defilements are there, but mainly we are talking about, in the samatha meditation, we are talking about the hindrances. What are those hindrances? The first one is kamachanda, the sensual desire, kamachanda, and the vyapada nivarana, that is the ill will. And the third one is the tīna middha, and the sloth and the drowsiness. And the fourth one is the uddacha kukkucca, that is the restlessness and the anxiety. And the fifth one, the last nivarana, is the vichikicca nivarana, the what is called the doubt or the uncertainty. Those 5 hindrances affecting our mind, because of those effect, our mind cannot be with one object for a longer period. We are trying to move from one object to another because of the effect of these 5 hindrances. So to develop the hindrances, to develop the concentration, we have to suppress these hindrances. Why they are called nivarana? They are covering all our wholesome deeds. That means what we have not achieved, the jhanas, the noble paths, these kind of things are covered by these 5 hindrances. In Pali, that is why they are called nivarana. These 5 nivaranas are covering the upcoming good things, upcoming kusalas like jhanas, absorption, or the maggas, these noble paths, because of their effect. That is why we have to suppress them. Without suppressing these 5 hindrances, kamachanda, vyapada, tīna middha, uddacha kukkucca and vichikicca, without suppressing those 5 hindrances, we can never achieve the absorptions. We can never achieve the higher levels, higher results of the vipassana. Those are the 4 noble paths. We cannot achieve. So the initial stage is to develop the mind. We have to suppress them in order to have the jhanas or the maggas. So that is why we need to develop the concentration to suppress the hindrances. In the level of the upachara samadhi, these 5 hindrances are suppressed. We call the vikambana prahana. This is they will be suppressed for a certain period of time. They will not emerge in our mind. They will even not come to the surface level, rising stage in our mind, if we have a upachara samadhi. Then we will have 5 mental factors, the strong 5 mental factors in the upachara samadhi, because we call the vitakka, the initial application, and the vichara, the sustained application, piti, the rapture, and the sukha, we call the pleasure, and the ekaggata, one-pointedness. That is, within this, if you have achieved the upachara samadhi, the access concentration, these 5 mental factors are very powerful. That is, by the vitakka, by the initial application, you are like suppressing, you are eliminating the tīna middha nivarana. Tīna middha nivarana, that is the sloth and the drowsiness is eliminated by the vitakka, by the initial application. Vichara, by developing, by having a powerful level, powerful condition of this vichara, this is a sustained application. By the sustained application, by the vichara, the vichikicca is suppressed. Vichikicca is the doubt or the uncertainty. By the vichara, by the sustained application, we call them jhanangas. By the sustained application, by the vichara jhananga, the nivarana, the doubt hindrance, the doubt is suppressed. It is eliminated for a longer period. It will not even emerge within the mind. Then the third one is the vitakka vichara piti. Piti is the rupture. By the rupture, Jananga, the Vyapada, the ill will will be suppressed. And the fourth one, the Sukha, we call the pleasure. By the pleasure, the Uddacha Kukkucha Nivarana, we call the restlessness and the anxiety is suppressed. And by the Ekaggata, the Kamachanda Nivarana, by the one-pointedness mental factor, the Kamachanda Nivarana, the sensual desire is suppressed. By developing these five mental factors, we call the Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekaggata, we are suppressing the five hindrances by one of them. By each of them, all the five hindrances will be suppressed. Then after having the Upachara Samadhi, then these hindrances will not come to even the surface of the mind. They are suppressed. And furthermore, you have to strengthen these five mental factors, Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekaggata, and you will achieve the absorption level. Then we call the jhana levels. Then these jhanangas, Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekaggata, will be more powerful. And the five hindrances will not come to the surface of the mind for a longer period. And you can focus on one object for a longer period without having a different single object within that period of time. When you have achieved that jhana level or the absorption levels, you are eligible, your mind is very calm because you have already suppressed these, the sensual desire, Kamachanda Nivarana, ill will, the Vyapada Nivarana, sloth and the drowsiness, Tinamidda Nivarana, restlessness and the anxiety, Uddacha Kukkucha Nivarana, and the Vichikicha Nivarana, the doubt or the uncertainty. So these, because of the effect of these hindrances, that is why we cannot be with one object. Naturally, we are with those five hindrances. That is why we cannot be with one object for a longer period. By strengthening these five mental factors, Vitakka, Vichara, Piti, Sukha, Ekaggata, we are suppressing those five hindrances and achieve the access concentration and achieve the absorption levels, jhanas. Then we are suppressing for a longer period. If you are with the jhana, if you have that ability to come to the samapatti, to achieve the jhana, after having that level, your mind is very calm because all the nivaranas are suppressed, and you can be with one object for a longer period, and your mind is a suitable instrument to perform the vipassana task. Then you will have two advantages. Because you are eligible, your mind is suitable, mind has become a suitable instrument for the vipassana task, then you can easily do the vipassana task, the insight meditation, without putting much effort. Without less effort, you can perform the vipassana process. And also, you don't have to wait for a longer period. With the shorter period, you can develop the vipassana, you can achieve some levels of insight knowledges, we call the vipassana jnana. Sometimes within a certain period of time, if you are doing vipassana effortfully in the correct way, with having proper advices from a teacher, then sometimes you may have that eligibility to achieve the four mangas and achieve the ultimate liberation. That is the path if we try to understand briefly. So today we have discussed about the virtue, what is the Sila Visuddhi, what is the importance of the virtue, what is the importance of the moral virtue, and to which level we have to improve this kind of a moral virtue. And then what is the next step? We have to develop the concentration. That is the second level, the purification of the mind. We call the Chitta Visuddhi. And what is the concentration? We have elaborated, discussed, and why it is important, why we have to develop the concentration, what is the interrelation between the first stage, the purification of the moral virtue, and the purification of the mind. And why we need this concentration for the upcoming higher levels, we call the vipassana levels. So sila, apart from the sila visuddhi and chitta visuddhi, all the other 5 parts are related with the vipassana. The last one is related with the noble paths. The middle 4 segments are completely dedicated for the vipassana. So to perform that vipassana, why this concentration or having the level of purification of the mind is so important. So, and how we perform the vipassana task and achieve the 4 maggas and achieve the ultimate liberation. That is what we have discussed so far within this Dhamma discourse, and I hope you have got a certain level of understanding about the virtue, concentration and vipassana, how they are interrelated, how we have to perform them, and what are the importance of them. So I'm going to conclude the Dhamma talk by giving this summary, and I'm very happy to have this Dhamma discourse with you, this kind of explanation, and hope to have another discourse in next month. And I would like to say that we have accumulated a very important, very powerful merits by having this Dhamma discourse. You have listened to Dhamma, you have maintained your mind in a proper way, we call the yoniso manasikara. So these are very powerful merits. So I would like to send these kind of merits to our parents, to our Dhamma teachers who are teaching us the Dhamma, and may they attain the ultimate Nibbana as they are expecting. And also it is very important to send these kind of merits for the relatives and the friends who have passed away and who are expecting these kind of merits. May they receive these important and the very powerful merits, and may they have very peaceful and pleasurable lives, and may they attain ultimate Nibbana as their wish, and may they achieve all the paths and the fruition. And also I would like to wish all of you, may you all have a very good physical and mental health, and because these merits what we have accumulated within this Dhamma discourse may be a great cause, very powerful cause to come true all the wishes within your mind, all the good wills, and may you have a long life, and may you have a pleasurable and desirable life after this, and may these merits will helpful to achieve the ultimate Nibbana, all the paths, all the noble paths and fruitions as your wish. And I would like to and may all the blessings of the triple gems with you. And I'm going to conclude, and thank you everyone. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato